Hi everyone. I'm Rudra Saraswat, and I'm the project lead of Ubuntu Unity, Ubuntu Web, Ubuntu, and I'm also an Ubuntu member. I'll be talking about contributing to Unity 7 and Ubuntu Unity. So, uh, so, um, so in the next few minutes, we'll be discussing the current state of affairs, that is, the features added in Unity 7.6 and Ubuntu Unity 22.10, and then the features planned for the next release, and then how you can contribute to Unity 7, and then the various ports of Unity 7 for other distributions. Beginning with the features in 22.10 and 7.6. So the changes include the dash, hard, and other UI elements being redesigned with a much flatter and modern appearance. And then support for accent colors was added to Unity Control Center, and many other bugs such as the theme list being empty were also fixed in Unity Control Center. And then other bugs such as the empty trash button not working were also fixed. And then a new drop-down to toggle between dark and light themes and change accent colors was also added to the panel. Um, so, uh, the features planned for the next release. Ubuntu Unity 2004 will be released with all the other flavors in April next year. We are porting the new unofficial Ubuntu settings app, which is still work in progress, and is written in Flutter to Unity, so I'm sure French guy CH would be pretty happy hearing this. And then we are also considering working on the new welcome app for Ubuntu Unity 2004 written in Electron or Flutter. And then we are actively replacing all the remaining GNOME apps and dependencies. Let's discuss how you can contribute to Unity. You could help port Unity to a distribution of your choice and become the Unity maintainer for that particular distribution, or you could help add new features or fix bugs in Unity. So I've given a link for where you can submit new merge requests to Unity. And then you could also join. And then, if you face any problems, for example, you could join the Ubuntu Unity Telegram group or Discord server. So I've given the links here in the slide. Um, also then, porting Unity 7 to other distributions. Unity 7 is available. Unity 7 is actively being ported to other distributions such as Fedora, Gentoo, and Arch. So beginning with Unity 7 on Gentoo. This port is based on Unity 7.6 and is extremely stable. In fact, I'll actually be doing. I would have presented from that, but since this is a 10-minute talk, I won't have enough time to show Unity 7 running on Gentoo. So, yeah, I've given the links for the GitHub repository and the Telegram group in this slide. And this port is maintained by C4PP4, who I would like to give a huge shout out to. So here's a screenshot of Unity 7.6 running on Gentoo. And then Unity 7 on Fedora. Yeah, Unity 7 is also now available on Fedora. So this port is based on Unity 7.6 and is pretty usable and stable. However, there are a few bugs which are left, Catmaster is actively fixing them, and there are a few missing packages. But apart from that, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it is pretty stable and usable. So again, I've given the GitHub repositories link, and yeah, it is maintained by Catmaster21, and then Unity 7 on Arch. So I was actually working with Marco Trevisan here. I was working with him right now a few minutes before the talk. So barring one or two tiny issues, it is pretty much ready for Arch. So all the Unity packages compiled successfully and have been packaged for Arch. And this port is maintained by me. So yeah, thank you for joining this session. I've given my contact details here, and yeah. All right, so see you all next time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marina Castejon, and I'm a UX manager at Canonical and part of the Accessibility Guild, an internal initiative focused on making Canonical's products and UIs accessible to everyone. Today, I'd like to talk to you about digital accessibility and how we can all be more mindful when we're building and designing software that's accessible by design. I will start, however, with an example of physical accessibility. So there once was a man who saw his wife struggle while peeling potatoes. She had arthritis, and peelers before used to have a thin metallic handle. So he designed an improved peeler. And one of the improvements was a thicker handle that was easier to grab, inspired by the comfortable rubber handles on bikes. So this innovation had a huge impact in the world of industrial design. And bear in mind that the brand behind this, called Oxo, they didn't market this as a peeler that was good for people with arthritis or motor impairments. This peeler was better for everyone, and that's why nowadays all peelers have much bigger handles. This is only one of the many examples where a focus on accessibility and inclusive design benefits everyone and fosters innovation. So the principle of inclusiveness is also aligned with the mission of open source: no discrimination against persons or groups. The rationale explained in the open source initiative states that in order to get the maximum benefit from the process, the maximum diversity of persons and groups should be equally eligible to contribute to open sources. If our ethical responsibility wasn't a solid enough argument, there are other factors that should make accessibility a top priority for anyone building software. So, on one hand, there is legislation. Over the years, there have been different mandates or laws that enforce digital and non-digital accessibility. So one example is the Americans with Disabilities Act in the USA in 1990. And in the European Union, we have the upcoming European Accessibility Act. So the deadline to comply is June 2025. And a wide range of sectors and products and services must be accessible, or companies will face legal repercussions from the European Commission. This mandate impacts, among others, e-commerce sites and operating systems. So Canonical and Ubuntu are obviously impacted. The good news is that up to now, regardless of the legislative body, the standard for compliance is always the W3C Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which you might have heard referred by the acronym WCAG or WCAG. So apart from avoiding fines, another very good argument to work in accessibility is that accessibility is not a niche market anymore. W3C estimates that there are 1 billion people in the world with recognized disability and with a spending power of more than $6 trillion. Before we go on, I wanted to take a second to explain that when we talk about disabilities, we tend to think about prototypical depictions of disabilities in the media, such as visually impaired people using a keyboard or someone in a wheelchair. But nowadays, we know that as the world population is aging, there are a lot more people who will see their abilities severely decreased, even if they don't identify themselves as someone with a disability. And the way these people will use software will change because their needs and abilities will have changed, and therefore software design should adapt to them. And on the other hand, we have to take into account people with a temporary, invisible, or contextual disabilities, and also neurodiverse people. So now, how can we make open source software accessible to all? So there are many gray areas when it comes to digital accessibility compliance. As I explained before, so there's the web content accessibility guidelines, and they provide success criteria and lots of details and recommendations. But for complex components or interactions, sometimes the solution is not there. So we often need to think creatively to come up with solutions that will make the product accessible. So when WCAG doesn't alone give us a straightforward answer, there is a concept that I keep coming back to time after time to assess whether something is accessible or not. And that is the principle of comparable experience, which states that you have to ensure your interface provides a comparable experience for all, so people can accomplish tasks in a way that suits their needs without undermining the quality of the content. This last part, undermining the quality of the content, is the key to understanding what is a comparable experience. So accessibility can be complex and daunting, but you may start with one general rule of thumb if you want to improve the accessibility of your products and services, and that is that usability and accessibility go in the same direction. What improves usability improves accessibility and vice versa. And at the end of the day, accessibility just means better usability for everyone. So here's some things, quick checks that you can ask yourself about the software you are building right now. Can a user interact with the system using different input methods, different than a mouse? So you can quickly check this, for example, by trying to use the system with a keyboard only. On the visual design side of things, does the UI respect the minimum color contrast ratio? Is the language easy to understand? Content design is really key for accessibility. Are error messages clear? Does the system explain what went wrong to the user, and how can the user recover from that error state? And last but not least, another check you could do is to see if it's usable with a screen reader. If you want some tips on web accessibility and how to use Orca, an open source screen reader, my colleague Scott gave a talk on this topic. And if you want to check that out, it's called Simple Web Accessibility Checks featuring Orca. Thank you, everyone. And now it's time for questions.
Yeah, my name is Harald. I have the pleasure of speaking to you about secrets in KDE Plasma. I'm a KDE engineer, and surprisingly enough, many KDE engineers didn't know these secrets either, so they must be really good. That's Plasma, of course. It's KDE's desktop offering. It looks quite lovely, if you ask me. So what can the desktop do? The desktop, you can middle click on it and you create a sticky note. It's already cool. You have spring-loaded folders. That's the thing you can see in the screenshot, where you open a folder and it opens a folder, and you open a folder and it pops up another window, and so on and so forth. It's like nesting dolls, but with folders. You can drop an image on it. You can change the accent color based on the color of your wallpaper. The window manager, Quinn, also has a bunch of lovely features. You can hold the Meta key, the Windows key, and move any window around from anywhere in that window. It's really, really useful to arrange windows. Of course, we have window effects, like the lovely one in the screenshot here. It would be even better if it was animated, because it's wisps animating the window out of thin air. It's absolutely amazing. Of course, there's also accessibility stuff, like you can zoom in if you want to and zoom out again, obviously. Oh, and there are so many settings. It's worth exploring. The task manager has also a bunch of useful features, and we are now entering the realm of what I call the scrolly wheel interactions. It's when you use your scroll wheel to do stuff. So on the task manager, you can scroll to walk through all the windows in the task manager. This is really cool, although I don't see the use in it. There are these tiny, media overlays. Now they are super useful. If you look carefully in the screenshot, I hope you can see it. Yeah, just about. On the VLC icon in the top right corner, there is a volume icon. That is actually interactable. So you can click on that icon and mute this application without ever opening the application. That is so cool. And the same also works for microphones. So if you're in a video chat and you want to mute yourself very quickly, you can use the task manager. Moving on to the system tray. Now, the system tray has the ability to pin itself. So this is like the pop-out version of the system tray. You can pin it so it's always open. It's useful for when you're trying to figure out why something isn't working, like maybe you're doing a presentation and you're trying to do a live demo, but the live demo doesn't really work. You might be opening the system tray and inspect the battery, for example, or ensure that you're in presentation mode. And of course, you can also have configurable time zones. So you'll probably not see it. It's a bit tiny in the bottom right corner. There's the time zone Vienna, but there's also the time zone for Sydney. That's also super handy. So you can always keep track of where your colleagues, your remote colleagues are. And oh, there are so many things in the system tray stuff. So you can really wheel on the volume icon to change the volume. You can also middle click on the volume icon to mute it. Super handy. You can also drag applications around in the volume applet to give them different outputs. You can also click on the microphone icon to, well, mute the microphone. Then there's, of course, this lovely media player widget, which allows you to control just about any media player without ever going into the media player. Then you can get the QR code for the currently connected Wi-Fi. You can get the QR code for whatever is in your clipboard. You can enter presentation mode, so you do not get disturbed while giving a lightning talk. Then there's KRunner. KRunner is super old. It's one of the features that everyone loves. You bring it up using a number of different commands. And then you can do all sorts of stuff. So you can find all the plunder you could possibly wish for. There's going to be apps and activities and bookmarks and browser tabs and documentation. Oh, it goes on and on. You can use it as a calculator. You can also use it to check the date and time, also in a different time zone. Super handy as well. You can also use it as a dictionary, or maybe as a spell checker, in case you're not quite sure how to spell engineer. There's also unit conversion, various system operations, and so much more. Oh, you could kill Firefox with it, literally. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I'm the last talk, so I'll make sure to use the entire 5-minute up. Okay? So my background, I'm a developer for 15 years. I open mostly in the LAMP stack. So that's, of course, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. I'm a cloud enthusiast, and I actually run a community in the Philippines called the AWS User Group Philippines. But aside from that, I'm also an instructor, and I also help startups get into the cloud itself. Okay, so a short background of our community. So our community has been running for over a decade, 9+ years. We have around 11,000 members. And every year, we have regular activities and solutions. And we actually track real impact stories. Stories like users or members that went back to the Philippines once they adopted, or at least adopted the technology. Or perhaps they got promoted in their job or career shifted because of the technology, okay? And our user group particularly has won among other user groups in AWS in Asia Pacific specifically. Oops. So what is a community event? Is it just free pizza and drinks? Now, there are obviously sometimes when we think, hey, it's a community, there will be food, there'll be drinks, there'll be beer. But of course, that is maybe our come on, but we should understand what is our community for. Is it a contributor community? Is it a user group? Because those two things are quite different, okay? In our user group community, our aim is to have mentors, because the IT space is such now a very large industry or large space. When you're previously, I've experienced this, you're IT, can you fix a printer? If you're IT, can you fix something else? Right now, it's so large now that we really need, not just for us, but also for the next generation, to filter out the exact needs. Okay? So again, here are just a couple of benefits why we are in a community. Filter technology, get exposure to the World Wide Web or the world technologies. You can also look at the locos, right? It's local, interactive, so you can have a safe space to be in. And if you also are a contributor, it actually pushes for your own growth. Okay, you might be shy like me before. I'm still shy now, but here I am in Prague giving a lightning talk, right? So of course, some learnings here. Number one, running a decade-long community, sustainability and consistency is hard. So that's why you need to know your passion. My passion is education, okay? And so that's why I continue to do this, because I want to teach more and more people, especially those that don't have access to a particular technology. Of course, I take breaks. Don't forget to not overburn yourself. Also remember that in your community, each person is different. Each person has an agenda, right? It's hopefully for the good agenda. And of course, understand that some people need more help than others. You cannot have a generic approach to everyone. Okay, so understand that there's multiple membership in your community. There's general, anyone who's curious, attend, right? Maybe they'll come once, twice. There's that regular attendee, okay? And hopefully they become speakers, mentor, they become regular or irregular. They'll volunteer, and of course your core. And I put a little icon there for the technology community manager. Usually if you're based on a technology, then you actually also need help from the technology itself. So from canonical, community manager like Philip, right? And of course, every activity or every member should have a activity that's addressed to them, okay? So for general, you can have your social media, Twitter, Facebook, meetup.com, okay? For quick and easy information. For your attendees, you have regular meetup, because this is where they can gather, have a face-to-face interaction. For those that are more advanced, you do workshops and code camps, okay? Next, study sessions. Really, this is like a curriculum that's available to everyone. Appreciation dinners, leadership seminars, you'll have job portals and swag stores, etc. Ayan. So thank you. Just remember this slide.